On this episode of the Knitting Tours, we'll talk about 3D printed machines, specifically sock knitting, resources, where to find the print files, and where did I go right or wrong in printing one of my own. Now let's start. This week on the Knitting Tourist, we are going to be homebound, which is me talking to you about this amazing knitting machine that I'm in the process of making. I will be transparent, this sock knitting machine and I are at an impasse, but I wanted to share with you all the resources if you were interested in making a sock machine on your own. And what it has taken me to get to at least this point, and hopefully that we can do this together if any of you are interested in understanding more about the components, where to 3D print, why 3D print, and hopefully making things and machines like this more accessible to people. 3D printing is such a great option, and I'll let you know where I am in the process. But with all that, thank you for watching. Thank you for those who are coming back again, and let's get started. Welcome back. There's so much to think about when you are talking about 3D printing. 3D printing has been around for quite a bit of time. People have personal 3D printing machines, and when the sock knitting machine craze happened and all these beautiful machines were being shown on Instagram and on YouTube, I was really excited to see. And then I looked at how much they were going to cost and was a little bit afraid that this was a little out of my realm of reach. So I decided to take a little bit of a different path and start researching and seeing were there any alternative ways. Could I buy an older machine refurb? I found this gentleman who created a 3D knitting pattern, sock knitting pattern for his mother. And he put it on, I think it's Thingiverse, and he provides all the information, all the schematics, all the printer files that you can download, and he also helps you with questions, which is quite amazing, of how to actually make this happen. The table itself and some of the other things that I conjured up were my own kind of idea of like what the heck was I going to store this thing, and also I needed something to put this on. So in part of the video we'll talk about some of the resources that I sourced from. I mean, this is a simple Amazon table, and then I had a cylinder that I got at Lowe's, which is the same size as the cylinder size here, so that when I did go to crank the sock, it actually would fall down in here, and then I could keep like maybe little storage bins down at the bottom for accessories. I had some really lofty ideas. I'm going to say that not all of them have come to life, but I want to take you to where I am right now, and hopefully this helps inspire some people to want to do 3D printing. So let's talk about 3D printing. I have found two patterns of machines. I decided to go with this gentleman's option of the one that he did where he built a machine for his mom, because it just had a complete list of accessories. He had notes, he had instruction manuals. Like, I didn't really realize that I probably needed to be an engineer to kind of finish this part off, but for the most part it's been fairly easy to get the pieces printed and everything. So I'm going to be showcasing some of the pieces. So this is a 72 stitch cylinder. He has provided everything from 42 to 48 inch, 60, which is commonly what I use for my socks. He also created an updated version with ribbing, because these machines do come with ribber extension pieces, so I did these as well. I printed these out. I really would love to just put a sock on here and start going, but I just wanted to show you that it accounts for pretty much anything you'd ever want to do. There's even all the sizes that I showed you in the cylinders for the ribbing. So these are also the print. I had the ability, I have a neighbor who is near the University of Maryland, and the engineering department has a great 3D printing, and of course you have to pay for it. All of this cost me about $163, and it was that expensive because these are a more higher grade plastic than the normal plastic that things get printed out of. Mainly because when I explained to them what I wanted to do, they said this would have me more durability. So that is, you know, phase one is sort of figuring out where you're going to print it. Phase two is figuring out what material and what color you want to print things in. I love a good white, so I just thought that's going to just be easy. Have it as the first version, test out what's going on, and sort of see. There are other components to this that I'll do a part two, but there's a counter, there's like a workstation where you can hold needles and things of that nature, there's a tension rod, and an actual counter. I actually have those things working, so I can do an additional video as a part two to show you what those look like and where did I source the parts from it. And I've drilled the hole into this, I've selected the table, I've printed everything out. There's also a couple of sites to source the needles and cylinder components. I think the biggest thing that I have found is that I love that everything was so easy and accessible. The place where I'm having probably myself in terms of getting this completed is now the construction of pieces. There are a couple pieces here that are really delicate, and there is a component here which is printed out separately, and hopefully you can see this, but I will bring it up closer. This has ball bearings to it, and then this grips to turn. There is, at this stage, a little bit of the bearings not catching quite well yet, and so I have an email out to the gentleman to see if something's not quite set up right, because obviously I'm not an engineer, or what can I do to get a little bit more tension into this. Looks like the needles are catching up and down, which is super amazing and exciting. And just finishing up getting the bolts here printed so that I can get this tied to the table and then start trying to work on a piece and see if this thing actually functions. There are videos of people who have done this and have a functional machine. I myself am in an impasse, but again, it's 3D printing, so everything's not going to be perfect, and maybe you have to print new pieces. I wanted to let you know where I was in it. I did get gun shy, I'm going to be honest, and I stopped at go because I just didn't know where to take it from here. I feel re-inspired by doing this channel and sharing things with all of you where I want to take this, because I am so excited about maybe doing a sock and talking about how to do sock knitting, or at least share with you my encounters in getting this done. So what I would like to do is I'll give you all the materials, see if anybody's interested in printing. I'll let you know where I sourced this table, the drills. I think the things that I didn't account for were drills, the cylinder pieces. Most of everything sourced really well. The construction of it is super simple. I think right now it's just getting to the final piece of getting this to grip really properly, and then assembling and ensuring that the needles are lifting and going up and down, which it looks like they're doing, so that I can get a sock on this and go. So hopefully by looking at this video, if you've ever been interested in 3D printing something that you've seen on the internet and are like, does this even possible? Does this even look like it works? If this does work, the interesting part of 3D printing is you apparently can 3D print in anything, and you actually could 3D print this in metal. If that is the case, I'm gonna have one of the students at the engineering school put this together, because that'll be beyond my skill set. but I would be really interested to see if this could be done in metal, and I wouldn't even know what that would cost. But let's get step A and then figure out if I even can figure out how to put these sock things on a sock, on this sock machine, and get the sock machine working. But not a super long video and like, oh, success, and here's the sock. I wanted to be really candid because crafting is all about sticking to things, making mistakes, learning from them, and trying to kind of get to the next stage. You are in my work from home office. Normally you're sitting with me in a different location of where I keep all my books and shoot a lot of my videos, but this is where I keep this machine, and I wanted to do this video to make myself accountable to myself, but also just be really vulnerable and share that everything that we embark upon sometimes isn't always going to click and be perfect, and hopefully by sharing this inspire you to get to going with this kind of stuff, but also know that even if you hit a snag, I'm going to hopefully give you updates as to what I do to solve this, and figure out how we get this to go and start making beautiful cylinder stocks. The last piece I will say is I just took a Vogue knitting class, and I am going to put the name of the teacher in the description, but she taught me a methodology, and I believe it's a Turkish, ancient Turkish methodology of knitting 2 socks on 1 set of needles, and she apparently a lot of that inspiration for that is also can be applied to making a sock on a machine such as this. So I thought it was such a great transition from getting this machine back up, making myself accountable to finishing it, but also taking class to understand how to do it by hand, so that when I understand to do it by hand, when I read a pattern to do it on the sock machine, we'll be able to proceed from there. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was fun. In our next episode of the Knitting Taurus, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to talk about knitting cruises. Mostly what inspired me to do this channel is taking time to learn about crafts and taking 1 or 2 of my first knitting classes at Vogue outside of New York City, and going to Seattle, and then opening up a yarn store online that went on for a couple of years, and the challenges that posed working full time. I had a pop-up where I started making my own yarn and going around the local district, Maryland, Virginia area called the DMV, and selling my yarn. I did quite well for quite a few years. And by meeting vendors, I got to go to different places that inspired me, meeting people that wanted to make yarn and wanted to do really interesting things and bring stuff to the public. And that consequently led me to going on my first knitting cruise. And there's so much I want to share about, like, how do you find a cruise? Is this right for you? Where do you go on these cruises? And I did talk to the woman that does craft cruises, and we are going to do a podcast-like interview so she can tell you much more about these experiences outside of what I have experienced. But I want to share how to start, what to research, where to go, and resources that you can do to make your decisions on how travel will be great for you. So I hope that excites you for our next episode, and we'll of course expand more on our Japanese knitting journey, where I'm going to start taking a couple of patterns and just doing some deep dives into some of the stitches that you'll need to make those patterns possible. So with that, I hope everybody's well. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for viewing, and thank you for such beautiful comments about the videos. I'm new. It's a learning process. I appreciate your patience, and I hope that this stuff is helpful. Keep knitting.